54 this was. 53, 54.
In Ireland, we have a Gaelic term for an expert storyteller, a shanachie. Growing up in Ireland, I always thought of my cousin Jimmy as a modern-day shanachie. His knowledge of life in Ireland from the 1940s onwards was mesmerising. Through him, I learned what life was like in rural Ireland after World War II.
All of these pictures like this here. Well, that's the Maureen there, before they modernized it. They give a distorted impression in America of Ireland. They give it very poverty. Scenery is nice. Everybody's drinks. Everybody's a drunk. It's false. You know, it's false. It's what they see on television. My name is Jim Burke. Let's say I was born in Ireland. I was raised in America. I was 11 months old when I left Ireland. I was born in County Tipperary. I went to Germany for 2 years. My father was an American soldier. And from Germany, we came to the United States in 1948. I'm a Yank, but I love Ireland. And I've gone back to Ireland many times.
That's of Jimmy, his wife Paula, and me. Jimmy's mother, Bridie, was my grandfather's sister, my grandaunt. My mom is Jimmy's first cousin. That makes us second cousins. To me, he's always just been my cousin. My family is tight-knit in that way. Even though we have a big family, I am as close to third cousins as to first cousins. Our family is lucky to have another way to learn about the past. Jimmy's father and later Jimmy filmed their trips to Ireland on an 8mm camera. This footage still exists today. It really is a family treasure.
It's reading the disc. Let's see, do I have to hit anything or not?
Just talk me through what's happening.
Okay. That's an old, well, at that time it was dilapidated. She was a recluse, the lady that lived there. I forget her name. She lived in there with 100 dogs. She had 100 dogs inside there. You know, they said, yeah, that's what they used to say. Yeah, and she dressed like a man. That's a woman. That's her. And the scenery, you can't describe it unless you go. You have to see it. You have to physically be there to really appreciate it. The old song, 40 Shades of Green, it is 40 Shades of Green. Winter and summer, you know, it's green. There is nothing as green as Ireland.
The cliches of having the gift of the gab and kissing the Blarney Stone are cringeworthy for most Irish people. They are for me. But they adequately describe Jimmy. He is the only person capable of silencing my family. Once he starts to tell a story, everyone falls quiet.
We arrived down, as I said, early in the morning, down to Rathsala. We were so tired and excited at the same time, and it seemed like we just laid down and it was daybreak, and the next minute there was a bang at the door, and that there was a fire down the road at Brian's.
Jimmy and his family had just arrived off the ship in Ireland when the neighbour's house went on fire. This was Jimmy's very first experience of Ireland. He was 9 years old.
So everybody up, out, down the road, you run, and it was great. It was exciting for me. I didn't know what fire, I was thinking of fire in America, like an apartment fire. It was a thatched cottage, you know, straw on the roof and so forth, and it was blazing all around the chimney. And there was a bucket brigade there, and they had something that looked like a bicycle pump in a big can, and there was somebody pumping with a hose on it and spraying a little bit of water out on top to put the fire out. So that went on for a couple of hours, and of course there was all sorts of tea and biscuits coming out of there to keep people going. And they finally dug a big chunk out of the roof, got the thatch out. But the house was destroyed inside from all the water that they put onto the thatch.
Jimmy now lives in Highland Lakes, New Jersey with his wife Paula. His 3 children are grown up and have families of their own. Jimmy has always kept close ties with Ireland and with his family there, including me. He has visited Ireland countless times, sometimes more than once a year. I remember as a child looking forward to his visits and hearing stories of places and people I had never known. Some of my cousins live in different countries around the world. We all have one thing in common: our desire to return to Ireland. That longing didn't begin with our generation. For Jimmy's parents, the trip to Ireland in 1955 was something they longed for. They missed their family in Ireland. They missed the Irish way of life. Being far away from Ireland for an extended period of time is difficult for any Irish person, and it was especially hard for Jimmy's mother.
For my mother, it was a big change. She was lonely. They missed the family. There was constant letters back and forth. You couldn't afford a phone call. The only time you got a phone call was when somebody died. I remember going to the store many times with my mother. She'd be going up to buy a writing pad to write letters. And they looked forward to getting letters both ways, back and forth, and that's how they communicated. My father was lonely too, to some extent. Their big dream was someday that they could go back, and he always talked from day one that he would eventually go back and retire in Ireland. But when I was 9 years old, we took a trip to Ireland for 4 months, which was really unheard of, but he really wanted to go back. My mother wanted to go back and see her family also.
It was the pull of the homeland and family that drew Jimmy and his family back to Ireland for their first trip in 1955. Jimmy discovered something about Ireland on that trip that he holds dear to this day: the simple way of life. The world he was plunged into was vastly different from the city life he was accustomed to in New York. No running water, no electricity, no plumbing, little industry, but he cherished it.
I always loved medieval times. I always loved knights in armor and so forth like that. And my mother always used to tell me about castles and so forth. So I was looking forward to that, to go to Ireland to see things like castles and so forth. And it was like medieval times in many ways, because you didn't have the basics in life. Let's say it was like stepping back into time. I mean, it was 55 in America, but it was like 1935 in Ireland. I mean, when we went back, there wasn't even electricity there. But we were on a farm. It was fabulous. I had a hell of a time. I was like a wild animal. I really enjoyed it. You didn't have running water. People don't realize that. 1955, you had to go to the well, and the well was maybe a mile away, and you had to haul water in 2 milk churns. One was for the house, and one was for the cattle. My cousin, technically my second cousin, I always called him Uncle because he was a lot older, but Uncle Will would have to go to every day with a donkey and cart. And it was fabulous because I used to ride with him. I'd go to the well every day. I thought it was great. And then as far as outdoor plumbing, that's all we had was outdoor plumbing. I mean, they didn't have indoor plumbing in those days. So you learn to fend for yourself after a while, you know? It was strange to that side of it, but it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me at all. What was nice is that it was country. I wasn't used to being in country, but this was real country.
At first, Jimmy's father Michael wasn't happy about the rural lifestyle that welcomed them in Tipperary. He wondered if he'd made the right choice by going back to Ireland.
He wanted to go home the next day. It was such a shock to him. It was so rural, so backward compared to being in New York. He tried to call up and see when the next ship was going back, if we could get out and go back in a week or two. But there was no ship going for at least a month. I mean, it was tough, you know, outdoor plumbing and everything like that. This is what I came back to, you know, what's wrong with me?
Once Michael met old friends and became reacquainted with the slow, rural lifestyle he had known as a child, he was happy he stayed in Ireland. He and his wife, Bridie, got to catch up with family and friends they hadn't seen since before the war. For Jimmy, this was the start of his lifelong love affair with Ireland.
I used to hear my mother and father talk about all these things, and I got to see these things. And then I even got to go to Trashins with my cousin over there. I got to work on a Reaper binder with him. But it was fabulous. I really enjoyed it. And ever since then, I've had ties to it.
For Jimmy's mother, Bridie, memories of Ireland were not all happy. She was separated from her siblings at an early age. Her father was unable to look after all of his children following her mother's death.
My mother was the youngest. Her mother died when she was 10 months. So that was devastating. And the oldest, I think, was 14 at the time. And the father, basically, as far as I gather, was very cold as far as they're concerned, because he never showed love to them. And he shuffled them all off different directions. So that was a common thing in Ireland. You either split them up with the family, or they had to go into an orphanage, which was no place to send anybody. And her memories were sad memories of Ireland, because being broken up in the family and that, and hard times in Ireland. But some fun times for her too in Ireland, she said.
One of Jimmy's fond memories of old Ireland is going to town, to Cashel, on a donkey and cart on a Friday afternoon. The town's magnificent castle, called the Rock of Cashel, is perched high on top of a hill and fed his love of medieval times. Cashel looks completely different now, except for the ever-present castle. The castle is one of my favourite places in Tipperary too.
So you'd always think about what it was like in days when knights would be riding up in horses and so forth up to the rock and whatnot. Fabulous. But it never changed over the years. The only thing is, over the years, like everywhere else, when I was a kid going there, there was sparsely just a little town. Cashel has grown out. Cashel, as far as you can see, there's houses east, west, north, and south now. This is a daily program. You get every day a different program. See, the ship was going on. Expected time to arrival in those days. Right?
So it was the end of June.
Yeah,
you arrived
yeah,
on July
yeah.
the 3rd. So
Yeah.
you said how many? It took 10 days
Yeah,
to
nearly
go?
10 days. Brigadoon on that ship, which was nice to see, because it was fantasy
That was
land.
coming.
And going back to Ireland then a couple of days later and arriving in Brigadoon, County Tipperary. I was waiting for the place to disappear, but it never did. It was stepping back into time.
Jimmy laments the changes he has seen in Ireland over the past 50 years. He fondly remembers the old Ireland he experienced in 1955 and often wishes he could find it again.
This is a picture of up at the zoo in Dublin. That's Paula, my Aunt Rita, my mother, my cousin Betty, and myself, of course, up in the back. Paula laughs, and my wife laughs at me because I'm very old-fashioned in certain ways. I get melancholy about a lot of things, you know what I mean? I'm a deep thinker. It may not seem like that, but I am, you know, and I miss the old things.
I can understand why Jimmy misses the old times and the old-timers who have now passed on. I miss the family members and friends who have passed away and their old Irish character. Their old way of thinking was simple, was familial.
Everybody had a great personality. Everybody was unique in many ways. They all had their little things, but they were all characters once you got to know them. And they were very friendly. Everybody was friendly.
Jimmy and his parents' close ties to their family and the rural lifestyle in Ireland spurred them to make repeated visits after 1955. My mother remembers Jimmy staying with her family when she was growing up. He was still visiting a generation later when I was growing up. It never felt like an American cousin was arriving. It felt like he was returning home, returning from vacation. Jimmy loved his trip to Ireland in 1955. But when it came to taking a trip back after his high school graduation, he had no interest.
My father said to me, look, you got to come to Ireland. And I'm saying, go, I don't want to go. You know, I've got the summer, I figured I'd have the house to myself for 3 weeks, for, you know, party, whatever. He convinced me, and I felt sorry for, you know, because he said, I won't have a good time because your mother will be a wreck. So I went to Ireland, and I had a fabulous time. It destroyed my life, because after that I always wanted to go back. And I did. I went back many, many times. And I mean, I still go to Ireland. I found a whole new life by doing that, and all cousins and whatnot. And I just love the country. I love the people, and I love the atmosphere. But from something that I thought was going to be horrible, turned out to be, well, it affected my whole life. It changed my whole life. And in fact, I even got married there. I didn't marry an Irish girl, but I married an American girl, but still, I got married in Ireland.
There is a draw, an intangible string that pulls people back to Ireland. Even when Irish people emigrate, they form Irish communities in other countries. They eat Irish food, they listen to Irish music, they drink in Irish bars. They dream of returning to Irish soil someday. Nowhere is truly home unless it is Ireland. Even though Jimmy grew up in the United States, he never let go of his ties to Ireland. He does all those things. Eats Irish food, listens to Irish folk music. His house is filled with mementos from Ireland. I realised that I can't let go either. I came to the United States over a year ago to go to graduate school and study telecommunications. Even though it's been an amazing experience, I want to go home after I graduate. I defend my decision often and find it hard to give an explanation for why I want to go home. The Ireland I grew up in was very different from the Ireland Jimmy was drawn to as a child and later as an adult.
The times have changed, you know, I mean, Ireland is not quaint anymore. Yeah, it's different. And every time you go, it's built up more, you know. And there's a lot of people I don't know anymore, you know.
It was always the simple things that appealed to Jimmy and drew him back to Ireland. The rural way of life and family. Jimmy prefers things the way they were, what he calls old Ireland. As Jimmy has gotten older, people have passed away, and the country has irreversibly changed. He says Ireland has changed so much it is often no longer recognisable.
If an old person came back, you know, or an old timer came back and put him in the same spot where they were supposedly working or spent time, they wouldn't know what they were. Could never adjust. It's like a prisoner coming out of jail after 20 years. Can't get along with the technology or anything else, you know, it's amazing.
My grandmother died last year. She and I were very close. She was one of the last of the old folks left in Ireland. I worried that Jimmy wouldn't return after she died. He says he sometimes thinks he won't come back, but he knows in his heart that his connection to Ireland is too strong. Even though he said a final goodbye to my nana, he can't say a final goodbye to Ireland.
Even as older person, you always tend to go back to Ireland because you're always hoping, even though you know you can't replace what was there before, you still like to think it's there. It's not there, though. And unfortunately, the last trip that I took to Ireland, the quaintness is gone in Ireland. Ireland is not Ireland. People at work, you know, they all hear me talk about Ireland, or they say they want to come with me, they want to go with me. And I tell them, you can't find it. It's not there. I said, Ireland's gone. I said, you'd have to search now for Ireland to find old Ireland, you know.
The farm life Jimmy grew up with in Ireland is harder to find now. Perhaps I'm part of the new Ireland, one of many families who left the land and strayed to the cities. The scenery may have changed and technology may have advanced, but there will always be something unique about Ireland, something that makes Irish people like Jimmy and me return home.
It's hard to describe, but Ireland is unique in many ways. Just to arrive in Ireland is nice, and to go down into the country, anywhere in the country is nice.
For Irish people, family will always be important. We will always value the simple things in life, like home. I know I certainly do.